Flying Legends 2001 was a perfect example of the vagaries of the British weather and why two-day shows are a good idea. On the Saturday, the weather was overcast, and by the end of the afternoon, rain curtailed the display. However, the Sunday stayed dry, and an almost full program was put on. The world's only airworthy Hawker Nimrod made its public debut at the show. The pilot was Charlie Brown.
Well, the Nimrod was the fleet fighter. It was a development from the Hawker Fury. It is basically a Hawker Fury, but with a hook on the back. I believe it was sold to the Fleet Air Arm as a completely new fighter. The Hawkers weren't daft. They took all the development money for a completely new fighter, and when they rolled it out, it looks rather like a Fury to me. Absolutely right. They used a lot of the Fury stuff.
The Nimrod is powered by a Rolls-Royce Kestrel engine, which was the forerunner of the mighty Merlin.
As you can see, it's got a little short, narrow undercarriage, quite long travel oleo legs. It's pleasant when you get it in the air. You really can see that it's almost exactly like the Hurricane to fly. So Hawkers, whatever their design philosophy was, it went straight into the Hurricane. It feels very much the same as a Hurricane, almost neutrally stable.
Stars of the show were undoubtedly the Grumman F-3F and G-32A biplanes, making their debut here in Europe. They had been shipped over from the Planes of Fame Museum in Chino, California.
The F-3F is, the really first of the Grumman aircraft ironworks. It started with this little sturdy fighter, and they went all the way through the F-7F you see down at the end of the line for World War II airplanes. And they saw limited service, but of course, in those times, evolution of aviation was changing daily. Airplanes had a very short service life because there was so many vast improvements being made. It's very, the Brits use the term agricultural. Things vibrate and it shakes, and on takeoff it accelerates well and climbs good. And for a biplane, a very high performance for a biplane. We're not running the engines at their full capacity. Just keeping in the spirit of making them last as long as they can. They're rated at 1,000 horsepower, and even using reduced power like we use, a few hundred meters, they're airborne.
After the two visitors had displayed, there was a flypast by all the naval World War II fighters from the Grumman Ironworks. F-3F, Wildcat, Avenger, Hellcat, Tigercat, and Bearcat. Only at Flying Legends do you see formations like this in Europe. Flying Legends saw two B-17 Flying Fortresses in the same airspace, although sadly not in formation. Sally B was joined by French-based B-17 Pink Lady. Sally B is arguably the star resident at Duxford, and it flies in tribute to all the brave aircrews who lost their lives flying bombing missions in World War II. The P-47 Thunderbolt was an ideal escort fighter for the bombers. Here, we can get a great view inside the cockpit with pilot Steve Privet, whose helmet cam gives you a pilot's eye view of the display.
About 2,000 feet, just overbanking now, getting lined up on the runway, letting the speed build up, looking for 300 knots to pull up for a loop. And I've got visual the B-17s, they're clear. So just running down the runway now, pulling up from about 500 feet. About 4G. Pulling over the top, looking for the horizon on the back side of the manoeuvre. Visual with the runway again. Got the line. Now I'm going to aim to the left of the motorway, to the east of the crowd. I'm going to pull up for a wing over to the right. Now I'm just manoeuvring the aeroplane to run back down the line. Conscious of the motorway, not getting too low over that. Just easing the aeroplane down, about 260 knots now. Along the crowd line, banking to the left. Speed in those turns gets bound to a minimum of 150 knots. Maintaining a max continuous power. It's a nice aeroplane, the Thunderbolt. It's quite heavy in pitch, so you think you're pulling 8G, but you're only pulling 4. But it rolls very nicely. Got the other two airplanes visual there, out on the other end of the line. So probably 100 feet here, 260, 270 knots. I'm just going to do a bend to the left, aiming towards the end of the crowd line. All the time looking at my watch. I've got a set time to start and a set time to finish, so conscious of what time I need to be off the stage. So again, just descending over the motorway. Running down it. This is where I just do a little wing drop. There we go. Pulling up for an aileron roll. That's when I leave the show.
Flying Legends 2001 also saw appearances by legendary fighter aces. Bud Anderson, who still flies Mustangs today at the age of 79, flew over 100 missions in World War II and has 17 successes to his credit. He got the chance to sit in a Mustang painted in the colors of his old aircraft. Earlier in the week, he even got to fly Old Crow over his old airbase.
You can imagine what my feelings are. You know, to be able to come back here to England and fly a Mustang, not just a Mustang, but a Mustang painted like I had flew in World War II. then to be able to take it myself, fly to East Anglia, find the old base down there, which has been returned to agriculture. We could still see the outline of the runways, and I could still, where our squadron was is now a weekend caravan park. To be able to see that from the flight and then have John Dibbs take pictures of me with the old crow and that in the background is pretty nostalgic. I think you can imagine how I feel about that.
No, we moved into the 48th fighter.
Other aces at the show included Lee Archer from the legendary Tuskegee Airmen and Bob Goebbels with 11 combat successes over Italy.
We had to be very young to do this kind of thing because you'd go out 2 hours and you'd fight for 5 minutes, 10 minutes or whatever. French was sweat, nervous, keyed up, a little nauseated, and you had to fly back 2 hours, you know. And then the next day be ready to go again. It was a young man's game.
Duxford was home to the first operational Spitfires from 19 Squadron, and today it's still the best place in the world to see Spitfires flying. The next display sees a formation of various types. We flew with John Romaine.
We're running in at 45 degrees to the airfield. There's the familiar farm going underneath, and you can just see the airfield coming in now. Speed now is getting towards 300 miles an hour as we pull up into the first of the loops. Up and up, sky disappearing as we go over the top. There's the other two aircraft just accelerating down the hill there. Very difficult for me to keep up with them at this stage. Quite smooth at this point, obviously. Prop wash is not an issue. There we go, there's the runway again. And see the shadow going there. Here's the pitch up. And there's the roll. Horizon going through. You can just see the aircraft ahead rolling as well. And there we are into the Echelon 3. Now the next pass is going to be what we call a missing man. The last alignment going in there. To get us running down the centre line of the display. And height's diminishing now as we come across one of the roads and the railway lines. Height coming down. Now only a matter of probably 400 yards from the airfield. Motorway will go underneath us any minute. One road, there's the motorway. Now we're closing, there's the runway. Next thing you'll see is Charlie pick up and disappear, and we're now left with the two and the missing man gap in the middle. Quick check where Charlie's gone. There goes Nicky to the left. Quick check on Nicky, and there's the brake for me to the left.
Flying Legends 2001 ended with the traditional mass balbo of classic piston-engined aircraft. This formation made a sound that couldn't fail to stir the soul. For many people, the event of the year was Delta Jet's celebration of 50 years of the Hunter. 15 Hunters gathered at Kemble Airfield for an event that would culminate in an historic flypast by all of them. Before Before his display, Jonathan Whaley did his usual walk-round inspection of the aircraft.
Don't want anything dropping off in the middle of that formation. Ruin somebody's day. You've just landed, need the gloves on for this bit. It's still hot. But you've got to check it actually moves, because it actually expands, and when it gets hot it actually expands by an inch and comes back about an inch and a half. So just check that. You can move it, but it is still hot. These flaps underneath here, spring-loaded, the same on the top. When the engine can't get enough air actually in through here, it actually sucks those open and actually get more air inside. Sabrina's, named after the famous lady for her endowment. That's it, go fly.
This aircraft is an F-58A variant owned by Heritage Aviation Developments and is based here at Kemble with Delta Jets. Built in 1956, the aircraft saw service in Germany with No. 3 Fighter Squadron, before being sent to No. 229 Operational Conversion Unit at Chivener. In 1972, the aircraft was delivered to the Swiss Air Force, where it spent its service life as a target tug. Show included the Red Arrows, who have an historic link to Kemble Airfield.
The Red Arrows have a great history here with Kemble. I mean, in this very hangar that we're standing in was their base for 13 years, and they were here as part of the Central Flying School in the 60s and continued here right the way up through 1983. I think they left the airfield. So I mean, this place is steeped in tradition with the Red Arrows, and you can't really have an air show at Kemble without the Red Arrows.
Because of the good weather, the Red Arrows were able to perform their full display sequence. Always impressive, the Red Arrows act as ambassadors for the RAF wherever they display in the world. The 2001 Red Arrows are led by Wing Commander Andy Offer. Their display includes close formations with maneuvers such as the Big Vixen Roll, Flanker Bend, and the Swan Loop. The Reds fly the BAE Hawk, their replacement for the Gnat, the RAF's modern advanced jet trainer. Once the main formation part of the display is over, the team split into two formations, Enid and Jippo. One of the more romantic parts of the display is appreciated by one of the Swiss pilots. The synchro pair perform dramatic opposition passes that draw gasps of breath from the crowd. A first-time visitor to the UK was Swiss hunter F-58 Papyrus. The aircraft markings were particularly unique.
Yeah, these markings actually come from our squadron, Squadron 15. The squadron sign of the 15 is a white Papyrus aircraft, and we just tried to put the squadron sign onto the aircraft in a good way.
Hunter served with the Swiss Air Force for almost 37 years and was used as the mount for the Patrie de Suisse display team. In fact, many of the Hunters on the display circuit used to belong to the Patrie. The Hunter is powered by a single Rolls-Royce Avon engine, giving a maximum speed of around 710 miles per hour. The Hunter can operate at up to 51,000 feet. Armaments on the single-seat versions included 4 30mm Aden cannon, 2 5,000-pound bombs, 2 1,000-pound bombs, as well as a rocket-firing capability. Export versions could also carry other stores, such as cluster bombs and Sidewinder missiles. Over 2,000 Hunter airframes were built, making it Britain's most successful post-war fighter.
The aircraft I'm flying today is replicating the original Hunter that made the first flight on the 20th of July in 1951. And it's been painted exactly the same colour to replicate that flight. And we took it to Boscombe Down, where the first flight originally took place. And on the 20th of July, I was privileged to be able to take it into the air in front of an audience, including Neville Duke, the very first test pilot.
But the crowd had come to see this sight. 15 Hunters taxiing for takeoff on Kemble's runway. With 15 aircraft flying together and no rehearsal, how difficult is formation flying?
Well, the first thing is you never look where you go. The only thing you must do is look at the man you're formating on. It's a bit like if you imagine driving down a dual carriageway and looking at the car that's driving on your right and only look at the car that's driving on your right, not what's in front of you. What we do is rely on the leader for the clearance to keep us in clear airspace, and we look at the other aeroplane, take some formation reference points so that we know we're the right distance out, and it will be symmetrical the formation will be symmetrical, and we fly looking purely, let's say, to the right, and the leader does the flying for the whole 60.
So the finale approached. 15 hunters forming up over the Bristol Channel, just 4 minutes from thrilling the crowds at Campbell.
Campbell, 4 minutes.
4 minutes, roger.
Silver, join.
Take them up.
Holding down.
Stay ready.
Thank you. Strike your whip.
Looking good, there's one on the far right now coming. The two jets far left and far right, sucking just a tiny bit. That's it, good there, hold it there, that's it, you got it.
2 minutes.
Covered.
C'est génial, c'est fantastique. C'est superbe.
Okay, Hunter's looking good, strike master leaving you now, John, next to the glory.
On the ground. 1 minute.
Okay.
5 miles. No more change.
And then, there it was. 15 hunters in formation over Campbell. There was no air show at Middle Wallop this year, as the event is biannual, but there was an evening show called Music in the Air. This involved displays flown to music played by a large orchestra, certainly something different. Visitors were rewarded with a typical summer's evening and skies that changed as much as the aircraft that flew in them. The finale was a menacing sight of 4 Apache gunships flying in the darkened skies over Middle Wallop. Formidable attack helicopters in their natural environment. Not all air shows take place at airfields, of course. There are a number of shows in the UK that take place on the coast. The largest of these is the display at Sunderland. The show is free and draws hundreds of thousands of people over the weekend. The weather was perfect for a day at the beach, and the crowds enjoyed a varied display over the 2 days. A striking and unusual sight was the F-117 Nighthawk, not usually seen at non-military displays. Although it's known as the stealth fighter, the 1,270 missions they flew in the Gulf War were all bombing missions. The F-117 first flew over 20 years ago, but today the shape still looks like something from science fiction. The Nighthawk's pilot is Squadron Leader Link Taylor, an RAF pilot on exchange duties with the USAF. This is a formation more usually seen with the flight's Lancaster, the Dakota becoming a slightly rarer performer these days. Bringing the show to the crowd was the Royal Marines with their Sea King helicopter, at first displaying, then dropping Marines onto the beach. An aircraft that spends a lot of its time over water is the RAF's Nimrod. This aircraft from 42 Squadron at Kinloss normally carries a crew of 13 people and is used for anti-submarine warfare and search and rescue. The MR2 Nimrod is to be replaced by an updated Nimrod MR4A in 2004. But until then, we can still enjoy the sight of such a large aircraft being thrown around the skies. One day, they'll actually roll it and surprise everyone. If you've been to an air show in the UK this year, chances are you've seen the RAF Falcons in action. Their freefall and non-contact canopy stack displays have thrilled crowds at air shows and special events across the summer. The team are all parachute jump instructors, based at No. 1 Parachute Training School at Bryce Norton. One PTS, as it's known, trains parachutists from all three services. Basic training takes place in the hangar with a number of jumps to follow. The basic parachute course lasts 4 weeks for regular soldiers, and in this time they'll complete 8 jumps. The motto of the parachute training school is "Knowledge dispels fear," and this is amply demonstrated by the RAF Falcons in action. Taking the Falcons drop at Eastbourne Airshow as an example, we run you through the procedures involved in a display. About 2 hours before the drop, detailed briefings will take place amongst the team and with the aircrew in the C-130. The Falcons have the option of 3 shows, depending on the weather. The type of show will not be decided until the team leader and aircraft captain have a chance to survey the weather and the drop zone. About 2 hours before the drop is meant to take place, the drop zone team will arrive at the location. The drop zone safety officer calculates variables, such as wind direction, using a surveyor's theodolite to track a balloon up to 3,000 feet. Once all the conditions are taken into account, the drop instructions are compiled and passed to the team in the air via radio.
We've been here from surface up to about 3,000 feet.
2 minutes prior to display, a number of flares are lit to give the Falcons visual location information.
I'll ensure that all the preparation for displays is made from a practical point of view, that the men are ready for the display, they know about the type of arena that we're going into. I will also then make sure that the crew are briefed correctly. I will then spot the aircraft, ensure that the captain is flying in the correct area over the correct DZ, call the lights, the red and the green light, and I will always be the first out of the aircraft, which means I'll be at the bottom of the stack in a position to lead the rest of the men into any arena that we get called to go into.
They would then specialise and they would go on to one of the specialities in parachuting. They'd become parachute jump instructors. They spend about 5 years as a parachute jump instructor, training all airborne forces, and then the very best of these are chosen to represent the Royal Air Force, Flight Sergeant Chris Headley. He has over 3,000 flights. They like applause, don't they? They like cheers. But as they come in, led by Flight Sergeant Chris Headley, I'd like to give them a wonderful welcome here in Eastbourne. So Chris Headley is now lowered.
After all that effort, you'd think a well-earned rest would be in order. But most weekends, they go and do the whole thing again, sometimes performing 2 or 3 displays in a day.
I think we're very successful by virtue of the fact that we have something up our sleeve that many other display teams don't. That is, once we have completed our display, we are able to meet the public, chat to them about how we've done on the display and also about the RF in general.
thing you've seen so far then tonight? Is it good on you?
We do speak about other display acts, and they often compliment the fact that it's so nice to speak to the people that actually perform the display.
The RAF Falcons, literally flying the flag for the RAF. The Royal International Air Tattoo is the world's biggest military air show, with more than 350 visiting aircraft from 30 different nations. 180,000 people visited the 30th anniversary show. The crowd got a brief sight of the B-2 Spirit bomber, escorted by 2 F-15s. The B-2 flew from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri and didn't even land before heading home, a 20-hour round trip. F-15 Eagle pilot Major Dan Blue talks us through his display.
Good 7 to 8 G pull right there. Standing straight up on the tails. As you looking back, there's about 3,000 feet. Roll left to turn right, a little air show thing there. And now coming back in for the high G turn. I'll bring this pass in about 400 to 430 miles an hour. And try to demonstrate the high G turn capability of the Eagle. Basically a nice tight turn, the type of turn you'd use against a surface-to-air missile if it was shot at you in combat, or if a fighter rolled into your 6, you'd lay a brake turn on them to try to deny a missile weapons employment zone. And max performance turn like right here, that's about 9 Gs. And that hurts, pushes you way down into the seat, and sweat pouring down into your eyes. Now just looking back here, trying to pick up the show line. Backing off to about 6 to 7 Gs here towards the end as the airspeed runs off, and then as I roll out, pull it right back up into the vertical climb. A little showmanship here, just a little roll inverted, push negative. You can see me push up against the top of the canopy there. Split us back down here. Showcase some of the Eagle's climb capability. You know, back in 1972, the F-15 set a time to climb record by soaring from the surface to 12 miles in just under a minute. And just kind of give you a crowd a first-hand view of that record-setting power right here by doing that vertical climb. Went in about 450 miles an hour. Full afterburner and then a 9G pull into the vertical. That spices up a bit here. Full of stick deflection, aileron roll. And you can see RF Cosmore kind of fading behind me there. Concentrating on the flight instruments displayed in the heads-up display there. The inner ear is kind of going a little crazy there. And roll out about 15,000 feet right there, about 3 miles up or so in that short time.
Another highlight was a display by the Italian national team, the Frecce Tricolori, which means 3 colored arrows. Flying 10 Aeromacchi MB339 trainers, the team always wow the crowds. Although their aircraft aren't swept-wing like most modern trainers, this apparently helps them keep in even closer formation. The team split for some dramatic passes, while the solo aircraft performs its aerobatic display. A classic Cold War fighter at the show is the MiG-21 Lancer. This is an updated version of an aircraft which first flew in the 1950s and is still in service with the Romanian Air Force, who were visiting Riyadh for the first time. Another 50s veteran is the F-4 Phantom, still in service with the Luftwaffe and formerly in service with the RAF. Many pilots have fond memories of flying the type. However, the ultimate in close formation flying was demonstrated by two Jaguars from the French Air Force. These two aircraft stuck together like glue, as this in-cockpit view shows. All displays at RIAT are closely monitored for safety and strict rules have to be obeyed. After a perfect display on the Saturday, this MiG-29 from the Luftwaffe pulled out of a dive too low and was immediately red-carded by air traffic control.
MiG-1 from the FCC, you are to land.
Is any reason for this, please?
We'll find out on the ground. We've just been told to instruct you to land.
The MiG-29 from the Hungarian Air Force had better luck and put on an impressive display. The Hungarian Air Force inherited these MiG-29s from the Soviets. This massive fighter doesn't utilize fly-by-wire technology, but is still incredibly maneuverable. You would think that a festival of the sea would not be of interest to a program about air shows, but there was a strong aerial element to the show. IFOS, as it was known, took place at Portsmouth's historic naval dockyard. One of the features of the show was a tri-service demonstration featuring a mock rescue of hostages from the hands of terrorists. First of all, a Nimrod flies over, gathering reconnaissance, followed by a Tornado and a Harrier. Then a Royal Navy Merlin arrives for further reconnaissance. As the mighty Chinook flies overhead, gunfire is heard. A Lynx flies in and drops soldiers into the thick of the battle. While the Chinook keeps a watchful eye above, a Sea King flies in to rescue the hostages. This display was a great idea, and certainly something to be expanded on for next year. September saw the 12th annual Battle of Britain Airshow at Shoreham on the south coast. Organised by RAFA, with all the profits going to charity, the show is a popular event in West Sussex. First up is a unit of First World War soldiers setting the scene for a show by the World War I display team. SE-5A fighters and a Sopwith triplane take off on dawn patrol, whilst the Black Baron sneaks in behind them. The nurse wonders whether the boys will be coming back. The Sopwith triplane was taken as the model for the German Fokker DR-1. This replica shows just how manageable this three-winged fighter was. Soldiers firing from the ground actually managed to shoot down aircraft in the Great War. These onboard shots give you an idea of the view from the cockpit. The SE-5A uses its superior turn radius to get in behind the DR-1 and scores a direct hit. With smoke billowing out, the Fokker finds the nearest airfield on which to land. Success for the Allies. The RAF's Harrier GR7, seen here flying over the south coast, is always popular at displays. The display at Shoreham was a roll demonstration, rather than a full air display.
The full display is flown from the ACU at Wittering, but the frontline squadrons, which is one of the ones I'm on, also have the opportunity to put on a roll demonstration. So it's more of a limited display to just show what the aircraft does and what we do in day-to-day flying on the squadron. So there isn't anything really that I do that's vastly different, apart from the hovering at the end, which is not something that we do day-to-day. Although we do come back and vertically land, we don't come in and do the sort of more detailed VSTOL work that you see me doing in the display. It's the longest conversion course that we have in the Air Force for any fast jet. The initial part is probably about 3 months long, which is just purely learning how to land and take off. There are so many different ways to do that, with different nozzle angles, different power settings, that it is much more involved. So it is a bit more tricky than the majority of aircraft fly, but the quality of the people coming through is very good. I was actually on the ACU for 3 years teaching, and whilst it's hair-raising at times in the early stages, it's very rewarding when you see what can be produced. With the nozzles pointing back, it's like any other aircraft, so any other fast jet. We can't go as fast as the Tornado or the Jaguar, but the versatility that you have with being able to move the nozzles down and then land either on short strips or vertically means that we can deploy to frontline areas of the battlefield. We can work off aircraft carriers as well. So the versatility of being able to do that gives the Harrier a huge capability, and it makes it a lot more fun to fly than conventional aircraft. The GR9 is being produced at the moment, which is an updated version of the GR7, so you won't see many physical differences, but it'll have a lot more computing power and various other software additions. And I believe the GR9 is going to be in service till about 2015, give or take, at the moment. And at the moment they're selecting whatever's going to take over, which is the Joint Strike Fighter, the JSF. And there's a competition going on in the States at the moment as to which way we're going to go with those. But there's a possibility that one of those will also be along the lines of a Harrier with short field, straight vertical landing capability to give you the flexibility that the Harrier has proved over the years.
Give a wave again.
Lorna and Rachel are twins who've been wing walking for the Utterly Butterly team this season. This is one act that's always a crowd pleaser. Two girls risking life and limb on the wings of two Boeing Stearmans. It's actually very safe, but there aren't many people who'd try it. The airspace over Shoreham is controlled, as there is commercial traffic flying above it. These Danish F-16s, one of which flew at the show, requested clearance up to 30,000 feet for its display and was awaiting permission. The F-16 is a classic and durable fly-by-wire aircraft that has sold to air forces worldwide.
I would say it's one of the smoothest aircraft to fly. It's one of the most comfortable aircrafts, and it's also actually it's very pilot friendly. I would say it's a very agile aircraft, and I think it's one of the most sold aircrafts in the world now. Everybody uses them, and I know why. It's a good aircraft.
still awaiting your clearance for the climb to flight level. At the moment we only have flight level 240 available, but that will be available to be consulted.
Copy that, holding 5 miles south, 240 will also do.
Okay, I do understand.
It can fly at speeds of Mach 2 and has a service ceiling of 50,000 feet. Its turn rate is incredible, as you can see here, with the moisture literally being squeezed out of the air and trailing off the wings.
We're now going to flight level 240. That's flight level 240.
The F-16 finally gets clearance to go to 24,000 feet and is gone. The terminal at Shoreham was once used in the television series Poirot. It's not difficult to see why.
It's a Grade 2 listed building. It was built in 1935, 1936 time. Stavers H. Tiltman was the architect, who was a very famous architect in the local area, and he helped design and develop a lot of other terminal buildings like Liverpool, Rochester, and there was also one down at Ramsgate. There was a similar building down there. You needed a terminal building to provide, comfort for the passengers of the day. Aircraft were no bigger than perhaps sort of 15, 20 seats sort of thing. The sort of, Dove, Dakota type situation like that. And that's the sort of aircraft used to operate at that time, but of course we've now we would have outgrown it if we haven't sort of stayed almost as we are. So we are looking at actually expanding the terminal building by building a new building alongside it, not affecting its stature as a Grade 2 listed building.
World War II fighters don't come any more classic than this, the P-51D Mustang. This is an unusual formation, the P-51 and a Messerschmitt 108.
Nice, light aeroplane, really fun to fly, turns very tightly, and it's just enjoyable. Yeah, excellent. It's got some interesting devices on the wing, which has got slats on the front of the wing, which was very novel for the time. So that gives it a very good sort of turning capability as it re-energizes the airflow over the top of the wing.
It hadn't flown for 5 years, so it was we scraped out about half a ton of Texas dust, I think, that had come out of it. But the climate out there's very kind, and it's been out there since the 70s, so really it's just looking over everything, checking everything, just checking everything was intact. Best of both worlds. We've got a little warbird for things like this where people want to, guys for the Mustangs and Spitfires to take shots at, and when we're not, we've got a 4-seater that's capable of doing 180 miles an hour, will carry 4 people. We've got a little touring aircraft, so it really is the best of both worlds. The only thing you could fault it on is it's just a little bit noisy.
Well, it was actually in quite good condition, but we wanted to get, obviously, an authentic scheme, so we didn't have to put registration letters on the side of it. And once we started thinking about repainting it, we just got more involved with taking the bits out and just tidying up the interior, and just took more and more and more of it apart. We were working on it over winter. The aeroplane was in the barn, it was in the dry. It was a good opportunity to do that.
The 108 is actually a license-built version by the French company Nord. It is painted in Africa Corps colours and often doubles for 109s at airshows. The 108 was actually used for communications and personal transport, but it certainly has a common heritage with the 109. The undercarriage on the 108 is hand-cranked, so special dispensation has been given by the CAA for a second person to be in the cockpit during displays. This is a magnificent sight, the Swordfish from the Royal Navy Historic Flight, in the air, over the sea. This was the last biplane in British military service and proved itself to be a legend at Toronto. and in the search for the Bismarck. Maximum speed was around 100 miles an hour, and armament varied. This aircraft is fitted with a massive torpedo. The Swordfish actually saw service in a number of theatres and flew from airfields as well as carriers. The Imperial War Museum at Duxford is a mecca for aviation enthusiasts. Its collection of static displays and flying aircraft attract hundreds of thousands of visitors all year round. This year, the museum has a new airfield manager, Stephen White, who explained the theme behind the September Airshow.
Well, I wanted to show that despite the sort of current trend to jointery in the services, the three services working together, there was nothing new in that, and that they've been doing it for several years. And so by following the story of a couple of squadrons, 20 Squadron, RAF, who'd flown for the Army for most of their history, and 651, the oldest Army squadron, who were, to start off with, certainly half RAF, half Army, that certainly the RAF and the Army had been flying together in support of each other for several years. And by showing that history and some of the modern stuff as well, we thought we could tell a good story.
An aircraft that 20 Squadron flew was the Bristol fighter. This Shuttleworth collection aircraft demonstrated just how advanced it was in its time.
The engine itself is quite a powerful engine. It's a 275 horsepower engine, so the aeroplane's got quite a lot of power. And the aeroplane is fairly manoeuvrable. The main difference between this and a modern aeroplane is that it would be more difficult to sight this aeroplane accurately with a gun, because in terms of directional stability, it's not as stable as a more modern aircraft.
A resident among the large private collections at Duxford is this two-seater Spitfire, flown by Carol and Grace.
This is very much a family aircraft. It was my late husband Nick Grace who rebuilt it from 1979 to 85. And what's nice is its history and the fact that we did it as a family, and it was all basically an original aircraft. It actually did over 176 operational sorties during the war, 200 combat hours. It was accredited with shooting down the first enemy aircraft on D-Day, and did a lot of ground attack stuff.
The show featured 4 Spitfires and 4 Hurricanes.
Flying a Hawker Hurricane, it's a Mark 12B. It was built under licence in Canada in 1942. It never actually came back to take part in the war effort in Europe. It was used in coastal defence with the Canadian Air Force during the war. It's painted in 78 Squadron Night Fighter colour scheme, the mount of Squadron Leader Ian Glebe.
Although UK airshow crowds are used to seeing Spitfire formations in the air, 4 Hurricanes was a very unusual sight. The aircraft being provided by the Shuttleworth Collection, the Fighter Collection, Hawker Restorations, and the Real Aeroplane Company. Seeing so many Battle of Britain types in the sky was very emotive, especially as the aircraft were demonstrating actual World War II combat formations. Another unusual sight was two T-28 Phoenix operated by ARC. We joined John Romain for a trip inside one of the aircraft. There was also a celebration of Sidney Cam's designs.
Sidney Cam was given the task as a junior designer of creating a small two-seat light aircraft for the 1924 LIM trials. So this was Sidney Cam's first design for Hawker aircraft. The reason for the airplane being here today is that there is a small commemoration of Sidney Cam's designs. We're flying both his earliest designs with the Cygnet right up to his last design, which was the Harrier. So the idea today is to fly the aeroplane in opposition with a Hawker Hunter, which was probably his most famous design. So it will be his slowest and probably his fastest together in the air at the same time.
Get ready with your cameras. That's the Cygnet on the right, the Hunter from the left. Cross over the lift building for hot. And here we go.
From 651 Squadron's first aircraft, the Oster, to its latest, the Westland WAH-64 Apache attack helicopter.
It's an awesome improvement in military capability, in reality. It is a tremendous information gathering system with this fire control radar in its own right, as well as being capable of prosecuting whichever design of military operations you want. We've got a self-deployment capability when we put auxiliary tanks on, and we've got a 1,000 nautical mile range, which is most unusual for anything like that.
This was the first display by the Apache outside of Middle Wallop, and it gave the public just a small glimpse of the capabilities of the aircraft. Apache is an awesome fighting machine. Its targeting and weapon systems are state-of-the-art.
The sort of things I'm going to do is try and show some of the capability both in the air and on the ground. The display starts at a high speed fly past, then basically pull up and do a lot of upper air manoeuvres, some crowd centre, crowd left, crowd right, and a couple in crowd depth. Come back to the hover. Then I'll do some sideways and backwards, which again I think always shocks people, is how fast the airplane can go sideways, how fast it can go backwards. And then I actually land on the runway and I'll do some ground handling just to show people the capability of the aircraft, and I'll do some backwards, forwards, some dead turns, i.e., as I said, turning on the spot with no forward motion.
The end of the display featured a unique formation of a Harrier and two Apaches. This represents the way the attack helicopter may be used in close cooperation with all three services. After the firepower of the Apache came the Army Air Corps historic flight. This de Havilland Beaver was in formation with the Chipmunk and Oster. Then came the finale. All of the aircraft that 651 Squadron have ever flown. Oster, Scout, Sioux, Gazelle, Lynx and Apache. A unique formation to end a unique show. The highlights of 2001 will be overshadowed by the multiple tragedies that occurred earlier in the year, the repercussions of which will be felt by the aircraft operators in the coming seasons. We hope that they manage to overcome any problems, to provide us with exciting and safe display flying for many years to come. Our final thoughts must be with the families of the aircrew who were lost this year. Their dedication and passion for display flying gave enjoyment to millions of people, and their loss is felt by all of us.